I was camping alone in a dispersed site just outside Coconino National Forest, Arizona. It was late afternoon, and I was already inside my tent, organizing gears because the wind had started picking up earlier than expected. The campsite itself was quiet. No marked paths, no fire rings nearby, just a flattened patch of dirt tucked between tall pines. That's why I chose it. I remember thinking how isolated it felt, even by solo camping standards. For the first hour, everything was normal. I cooked a simple meal on my stove, ate quietly, and watched the light fade through the trees. The forest settled into that familiar evening silence where birds stop calling and the air feels heavier. That was when I heard footsteps, not snapping branches or animals moving through brush, but steady footsteps on dirt, slow, deliberate, and close enough that I stopped chewing and listened. I assumed another camper had wandered too close by mistake. That happens sometimes with dispersed camping. I waited for a voice or a flashlight beam, but neither came. The footsteps stopped just outside the tree line. I stayed still, listening. A few seconds passed, then a minute, nothing. When I finally unzipped the tent slightly and looked out, there was no one there. I zipped it back up and tried to ignore it. 10 minutes later, I heard the footsteps again. This time they circled the tent. Slow, careful. Whoever it was wasn't stumbling or unsure. They knew exactly where they were stepping. I held my breath, counting the steps as they passed behind my head, then paused near the tent door. I said nothing. I didn't move. The footsteps stopped completely. The silence stretched long enough that my ears started ringing. Then I heard fabric shift, not my tent, something brushing against it from the outside. Fingers, pressing lightly, as if testing how thin the material was. I reached for my headlamp but didn't turn it on. I didn't want to give away that I was awake. The pressure on the tent increased, then stopped. The impression of a hand slowly slid away. After that, the footsteps retreated. Not quickly, not alarmed, just gone. I didn't sleep that night. At first light, I packed everything without stepping outside until the tent was fully collapsed. As I loaded my pack, I noticed footprints around where my tent had been. Bare footprints, no shoes. They led away into the trees and disappeared. I still don't know how long that person had been watching me before I heard them. This happened while camping with two friends near Lake Crescent in Washington. It was late summer, and we had secured a designated campsite not far from the water. The campground was busy earlier in the day, but by nightfall, most of the nearby sites were empty. We were sitting around a low fire, talking quietly, when a man walked into our site from the dark. He didn't greet us. He didn't apologize for stepping into our space. He just stood there, a few feet beyond the firelight, watching. He was older, maybe late 50s, wearing a heavy jacket despite the mild weather. After a few seconds, he asked if we had seen his dog. One of my friends said no and offered to help look. The man didn't respond. He just kept staring at the fire, then at us, like he was memorizing our faces. After an uncomfortable pause, he said his dog was around here somewhere and walked back into the darkness without another word. We thought it was strange, but not threatening. People lose dogs while camping. We went back to our conversation. About 20 minutes later, we heard him again, this time closer. He was walking slowly around the perimeter of our site, just outside the firelight. We could hear his boots on gravel, stopping, starting, circling. One of my friends called out, asking if he needed help. No answer. The footsteps continued. When I turned my headlamp toward the sound, the beam caught him standing directly behind my friend's tent. He didn't move when the light hit him. He just raised his hand slightly, shielding his eyes, and smiled. He said he thought he heard something like a dog bark, that was all. Then he walked away again, disappearing between the trees. We decided to put out the fire and go to our tents. I locked mine from the inside and lay still, listening. That's when I heard him, whispering. I couldn't make out the words, but I could tell he was very close. Close enough that I could hear his breathing between sentences. I didn't scream. I didn't respond. None of us did. The whispering went on for several minutes, then stopped abruptly. In the morning, we found footprints circling our tents. They were so close that in some places they overlapped our own from the night before. We reported it to a ranger who asked us to describe the man. When we did, he went quiet and told us another group had reported someone matching that description the week before. They had found their food stolen and their tents slashed open while they were sleeping. I was camping in the Appalachian region of West Virginia, hiking a section of trail I had done before. It was a routine overnight trip, nothing remote or extreme. I reached my campsite just before dusk, set up my tent, and hung my food bag. Everything felt familiar and safe. Around midnight, I woke up to the sound of something unzipping my tent. Slowly, carefully. I froze instantly, my hand still on my sleeping bag. The zipper stopped after a few inches, then started again. I whispered, "Hello?" Thinking maybe I was half asleep. The zipper stopped completely. I waited, heart pounding, listening for movement. Instead, I heard breathing, not heavy, not panicked, calm, right outside my head. I stayed still, hoping whoever it was would think the tent was empty or that I was asleep. After what felt like forever, the breathing moved away. I didn't hear footsteps retreat, just silence. Minutes later, I heard the zipper again, this time from the bottom of the tent where the fabric meets the ground. I realized then that someone was checking for an opening. I shouted and kicked outward, trying to scare them off. There was a sudden scramble, then fast footsteps running away through the trees. I didn't chase them. I didn't sleep. When the sun came up, I noticed that my food bag was untouched. Nothing had been taken. But when I packed up my tent, I saw muddy fingerprints along the zipper, pressed into the fabric right where my head had been. I left immediately and didn't stop hiking until I reached a road. I still think about how quiet that person was and how close they had been, and how easily they could have waited until I was asleep again.